All right, so Celina, I want to know more about introverts because I'm not sure I am one, and but I think I know a lot of them. So could you tell me a little more about what it means to be an introvert?
Yeah, and look, I like what you said. Like, I'm not sure whether I'm one. I know a lot of them, and no one can tell you who you are, not even tests. I don't believe in doing too many of those tests that can get you going down the rabbit hole, and distracted from yourself. So, basically, what I say to my clients or people who want to talk about it is tune into yourself. Tune into yourself when you're at a party, into yourself when you are performing a task at work, and see what do you need in that moment. And if you notice that you need often to withdraw and be by yourself in a quiet environment to feel recharged, like recharged your energy, your battery, so to speak, that could be an indication that you are leaning towards introversion, basically.
Do
So,
you, I'm
yeah.
curious though, like, so even, if you don't know you're an introvert, but it makes me
So,
think that maybe if you do have that tendency and you're feeling that, like maybe you would judge yourself or you would judge that as wrong, that you're
yeah.
supposed to be some other way.
Yeah, that's brilliant because this is what makes me passionate, to talk about introversion because in the Western world there is a bias towards extroverted personality. Like the extroverts are the quote unquote the top dogs, that charismatic, gregarious personality. And so there's a book, very interesting book called The Quiet. And in that book, the author talks about like this thing of in the Western world, the introverts are treated as a second class citizens, because that's right, that's right. And I'll tell you more about it. I can see like you are surprised. And as I said, that's what makes me passionate to talk about it, not really educate people, but yes, like maybe even educate people, so, and that bias towards extroverted personality that has historic roots, but we have learned then as introverts that something is wrong with us, because I'm quiet, like everyone is having good time, or looks like everyone is having a really good time, and all I want to do is just leave the party. Go home, put the pajamas on, and read the book, And so part of the issue is that uh, we don't understand ourselves well enough. The society doesn't understand this thing of, some people need, their physiology needs to recharge in quiet spaces, quiet environments. So we start making ourselves wrong. And and that's what often happens in schools as well. And I talk to mothers about this because you get perfectly like well adjusted introverted child, who needs. So when here in the Western world, we are like, you have to talk, you have to be a leader, yeah?
Right, right.
And the parents will often hear from the teacher, your child is too quiet, it's shy. But it's not often, it's just this little introvert whose physiology needs to recharge by going into quiet place. They need to withdraw. But what happens then is the child hears the teacher saying, hey, you're too quiet. Then you might hear that a mother saying, oh, my child is shy. The teacher told me my child is shy. So what starts happening is we start thinking, I'm shy. I'm too quiet. Something's wrong with me.
Right. And
And
there starts your beliefs about yourself.
exactly. You start creating stories and, start looking for the evidence, in the environment that something is wrong. When in fact it's just a misunderstanding.
Totally.
That's,
It's funny
yeah.
because when I was a child, I talked too much. I got in trouble
Right.
for too much talking. But as I've gotten older, I realized that I do need more quiet time than I used to.
Yes.
Or maybe it's just that I didn't recognize that I think everyone does need quiet time. You know,
Yeah, that's right.
but maybe
Totally.
it's because we become more aware of our needs as we get older, hopefully, right? We become more aware.
That's right, hopefully. And I think as we get like past, I don't know, I don't want to put a age number here, but a certain age, maybe after 50s, naturally we might do, want to quiet down a bit. Um, so yeah,
How does this actually, cause problems for people? People who say they took on those stories in childhood and now say they're an adult, and like, what kind of problems does it cause for them?
yeah, look, so uh, because we start to believe, that we are shy, or so then start introverts can start making themselves wrong, and then start to try to be something they are not. Start try to push themselves to be more open, more gregarious. That's exhausting. So here is that when you're not authentic self, when you are not who you are, you know, uh, it depletes your energy. Yeah. So here's the thing. They're shy extroverts. Introverts don't have monopoly on shyness. Shyness is learned behavior. They're anxious extroverts. Like we work, you and me work with clients. We did mentoring work. You'll see that, in clients. They're anxious extroverts. Like introverts don't have monopoly on that. Introvert shyness and anxiety, as I said, it's learned behavior. But we collapse shyness with introversion.
That is fascinating. No, that is
Isn't it?
so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this because I think, I'm thinking like I know what you're talking about with as far as the Western world um, glamorizes the personality, the type A, the person that's out there and they're talking and they're in the front and they're making like a lot of noise and they're putting themselves out there. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean they're like a better worker or employee or a better person. It just means they express differently.
So let me just make 2 points here. So one thing is like in the 19th century, before 19th century or something like that, the word personality didn't even exist in our vocabulary. So what happened then? It was with the onset of the industrial age, when people had to get out of their little communities and say in America, North America had to move into bigger cities like New York and Chicago, and you meet so many strangers. You needed to know how to sell yourself and be with those people. So what happened was that extroverted personality was more effective in that process. Hence, and then those are the times like early 20th century when those books, self-help books, started coming on the market.
Mhm.
So that's when the cult of personality, extroverted personality started.
Oh, you mean like new thought leaders and things like
That's
that?
right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. How to make friends and influence people. But there were books before then. You must probably, right now, I don't even remember all those books, books before then, like basically creating that cult of, extroverted personality because they were more effective in selling themselves, selling their products, selling their ideas. Yeah. So that's one thing. The other thing is, so the the basic difference between me as an introvert and someone who is extrovert, it's in the neurobiology. So an extrovert, their physiology runs on a neurotransmitter dopamine. And dopamine, when you get dopamine, so they're sensitive to, they respond, the brains of the extroverts respond to dopamine. And when they get lots of dopamine, that calls for being out. They produce dopamine by being out in loud environments with lots of people, talking, mingling, and the energy, just increases for them in that environment. For us introverts, our physiology needs another transmitter, acetylcholine. I don't even know if I pronounce it still correctly, but that neurotransmitter is produced in quiet environments. So for me to recharge my battery, energy, so I can function, I can talk, I can perform, I need that neurotransmitter. But for me to get that neurotransmitter, I need to get into quiet environment. Then when I produce it. So can you see that basic difference, fundamental difference, the impact of that on your daily life and how you show up in your daily life? So also, can you see, if you don't know what really drives you, how that can, impact you in meetings, in your relationships and in everyday life, basically. Yeah.
Totally, yeah. And I mean, eh, how do you help people? I know you use EFT obviously to help people, but how do you use EFT to help your clients like overcome maybe the judgment, and how do they, come to terms with how they operate in the world, being okay with that and maybe flourishing?
Yeah. So let me just tell you another little misconception, and then I go back to that. Because, and this is not we against them, put it that way. It's not like that, because there's no, in the world, we don't have pure extroverts and pure introverts. We'll go crazy, It's like if we are like that. And we have extroverts, introverts, and ambiverts. And in the middle, people who have, excuse me, the best of both worlds. Um, so how do I, so education. It's I run groups. One of the group is called Introverts, Influence and Money. One of the first things I do with my groups is education, like talk about these things that, we are touching on right now, and it's so fascinating because so many people would be like, oh, now I understand, why I'm like that. But because when you don't understand yourself, you start creating stories. you know, Especially also, like we said at the beginning, if the world says to you something is wrong with your behavior, you're too quiet, or
Mhm.
something. So one of the things that I do is education. And because the groups have introverts it's for introverts, excuse me, then we'll start exchanging ideas, and you realize I'm not the only one who feels like I'm a fraud or something is wrong with me. Why am I not like that one comparing? And that starts early in schools, and we say comparing, despairing. Once you start yourself comparing yourself, that's not a good thing to do. And so that's the first thing we do. The other thing is, the coaches that I work with, I say we as an introverts, we have incredible skills of listening, holding the space for the clients. Now, once I said like I said before, we don't have the monopoly, but it comes more naturally to be quiet, stand back, and allow the client to talk. So that's what I do quite a bit. yes, I have lots of skills like you do because we are passionate about this work. I do clinical hypnotherapy, I do NLP as well, I do EFT. But the main thing is, and I think maybe sometimes, maybe I'm a bit biased here, but I think maybe sometimes for introverts it's good to work with an introverted coach, because we get that. We can stand back, be comfortable with the silence, and allow the client to get in touch with who they really are.
Mm.
And, once a human being gets in touch with who they really are, with their authenticity, you know, they enormous power and energy that was suppressed just opens up. So that's one thing I wanted to say. The other thing that I wanted to say is that extroverts, we can learn so much from each other. This is about me talking about introverts and extroverts. It's about learning from each other and living in harmony, which we do generally. But extroverts are very good at promoting themselves.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because, like, what are
Yeah.
some, like, I know like coaches are like, if you're a really good listener, you're a great coach, but what are the skills that are
Yes.
challenging for the introvert?
Yes, yes. So extroverts are very good at promoting themselves, you know, and so there's a bit of a misconception in the world out there that introverts are less achieving ones. Like Warren Buffett is an introvert, you know. Um, uh, Oprah actually self-confessed introvert. Like, can you believe that? She says in an interview that she is actually an introvert, but she's well-adjusted introvert who actually knows herself. She says she knows she has to go, in quiet place, recharge the battery and go out, John Kennedy, he was an introvert. He
Mm.
talks in an interview about actually being introvert. So there are lots of very powerful people who are actually introverts, but extroverts have that skill of promoting themselves. So we hear more from extroverts, and how good I am.
Oh, yeah.
So where introverts usually often in their jobs or as a coaches, we might even myself, I know from my own experience, and I'll just share a little bit of my personal story here. But we stand back because we think someone else should recognize, should actually. We like that thing of being humble. You know, I'm good, but maybe someone else should say how good I am. It's like otherwise it occurs to me in my world as if I'm pushy.
Mm.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
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 So that's right. So, I used to, and I want to also, if there's time, to talk about the importance of vision. You said, how do you work with your clients? One of the things that I do is connect the clients with their vision. You talk about that, find your own why. But it's very, very, very important to us introverts if we want to succeed in the business world, in the coaching world, to stay really closely connected to our why. So I'll go back to that. But, to our passion. So when we have passion, when we discover our passion and stay authentic to it, we can achieve incredible things. So, I'm a true blue introvert. Like I really need my space. I travel by myself around the world. People say, why? Well, my husband doesn't like to travel. Number one, I like to travel, but I love exploring the world. Like I meet people, but I like my space too. But one of my passion was and still is self-transformation. I love that, the power of the brain and things like that, creating things, manifesting things. So at one stage, I was part of a very big and what I think it's a great organization in self-transformation. So because I was so passionate about their programs, you know, I would go and talk in front of groups about them. I would coach at the front of the house, in front of people. You know, I was effective at selling the programs, but I had colleagues in that organization and we'll go for coffee. And I think this often happens to introverts and introverted clients that I work with. I've noticed that, you know, and we'll go for coffee. I'll be quiet. And this, you know, this my colleague that I love dearly, you know, I still am good friends with many of them. Like the extroverted one, you know, they'll come in and they're charismatic, gregarious, they're funny, you know. And I used to look at them and I used to think, oh, I wish I'm like them. Then I will be performing. I'll be a high performer like them, you know. The good thing about this organization was that we had very good statistics, like rigorous statistics. How many people did you talk to? How many sales did you make? La 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 la, all that jazz that's so important in business, you know. And one day I went and I had a look at my statistics, which are pretty good. And then we had access to other people's statistics because we worked as a team. And I did this day, I decided to have a look at, you know, other statistics because, as I said, we all had access to each other's. And I was flabbergasted because what I realized was I was actually one of the highest performer, often like, you know, on the top of that performance ladder. But at that stage, I too didn't know much about introversion, you know, didn't understand introversion. So I compared myself with this, you know, that my insides, how I felt with other people's outsides, you know,
Like
how they,
you were somehow equating how you interacted socially when you were at the coffee house to like how you're actually showing up when you're speaking to your passion. Like they're two totally different things.
totally different things, but we collapse those ones, yeah?
Mhm.
Yeah, because you know, you go to this often happens. You know, I can see once again with my clients. We go then after the performance, after the meeting, after finishing a project, we'll go to the coffee bar. Extroverts will talk about their performance, how good they were. You know, introverts will stand back. And then it's what people hear, what people see, and it's not necessarily what's really happening. But that was one of my aha moments. I was like, oh, wow, this is really interesting, you know. And that was one of the things that led me to actually put more effort into understanding introversion. And I spoke with Dr. Peter Stapleton, and she said, you know, like, oh, yes, I'm an introvert too. So then we wrote that book, EFT for Introverts. Yeah, and so I'm staying connected to that passion and that vision.
Yeah.
And
Tell me, you know,
yeah.
since you just mentioned it, I'd like everyone to know about this book that you wrote with Dr. Peter Stapleton.
Mhm.
It's called EFT for Introverts.
Yeah, so it's tapping for introverts, EFT for introverts. So, you know, if you just go through the book, you'll find all sorts of cases and then tapping quote unquote scripts to, you know, to attend to certain issues. And look, when we work with clients, we know, Niko, one size doesn't fit all. Like we take each client individually and we attend to each client individually, and we use the tools that will help that client in that moment. You know, like I love your work with inner child. It's just so important.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Celina. You know, but you know, books are also really transformative because like not everyone can get private sessions or is able to or they're ready for it, but
Totally,
you got a book in
totally.
your hands. I mean, that's very powerful. So we're gonna put the description in this video below so you can go purchase Celina and Dr. Stapleton's book if
So
you
yeah, you can get it on Amazon as an ebook now. So that's that. That's you know that's important. But I don't know. Tell me, have you like I have seen in my work with the clients, with the introverted clients and extroverted clients, the importance of discovering your vision. Yeah.
I think that, yeah, I think everyone needs that, but I can see what
Yeah.
you're saying. Like, I can see how, if what you're saying is like you need to feel passionate about something in order to be able to comfortably come out
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
engage. And if
Yeah.
that's the case, because if an extrovert can just talk about anything anyway, right?
Yeah.
Right. But if you need that connection to your
Like
passion
that.
in order to, like you did, like you talked about that company you were passionate about, and you could
Yeah.
get on the stage and you could talk and you could sell, then I can
Yeah.
see what you're saying about how it would be even more important for an introvert to stay really connected to that in order to be able to communicate and talk about how they help people.
That's right. That's right. And often for introverts and extroverts, it's first discovering what is my authentic passion.
Yeah, and it takes time. That's work. That sometimes like,
Yes.
people are like, oh God, I don't want to, this is a lot of work. I don't want to dig down and try to figure out, my why I'm doing this and who I serve and what problem I solve. And like I get
Yeah.
it's work. But it is so worth it because if you can get really clear on that and you can stay clear, then it's so much easier to talk about it.
Exactly. And so much easier to wake up in the morning and put your energy into it.
So
And being, yeah,
I'd love to hear an example of like if
yeah,
you could give an example, say like if a client were to come to you and they're really blocked around this, and like could
yeah.
you give me an example of like what their life looks like before they do some work, and then maybe like what it looks like after, as far as the difference it can make.
So some time ago, I worked with a young female lawyer who actually was quite introverted. Like she used to be the phrase "true blue introvert" like me, and I thought, oh, I recognize this one. And so she was very effective at her, very skilled in her work, and very effective. She worked as a divorce lawyer. So her boss wanted to promote her. And she was like, oh my God, I cannot bear the thought. And what's wrong with me? That of promotion, what's wrong with me? More money, more status, and I'm like, I don't want this. And I'll go back to the money and status if I remember. I'll say more about it. And uh, so we worked, we worked on what she really wants, what her passion is. And what we discovered through her work, through the work, was that actually it wasn't her passion to be a lawyer. It was her mother and her father who wanted, like they live their lives vicariously through her. It gave them a status for their daughter to be a lawyer. So, as she good girl. She considered herself good girl. So to please her parents, she became a really good lawyer, but it wasn't her authentic passion. So so she discovered like my passion is actually empowering clients, like coaching the clients through the divorce cases, not going into court, but mediating through the couple. So there's some sort of harmony if possible through the divorce process. Yeah. So that was her passion, coaching, not being actually a lawyer, but the combination of being a legal professional with coaching gives her lots of power. So then we tapped on her going back and talking with her boss. So what we did then was, one that good old question: who does your boss remind you of? He reminded her of her father, and now look at the similarities. Uh, her father wanted her to be a lawyer. She like followed what he wanted. Her boss wanted her to give her promotion, because she was very good. And so the little girl in her wanted to say yes.
Of
No?
course.
So we worked through the issues with her father, like being able to say no to her father. So
Mhm.
she was now able to say no to the boss. She was connected with her vision, knew that she didn't want, to work to get a promotion. We worked through how she's going to talk to the boss, tap to that anticipatory anxiety. So when she went to the boss, she told clearly to the boss. She told him what she wants, and she wanted to have like start a little division in the law firm with the coaching the clients, And he said no. He actually said no. But because she was so connected to her power and vision now, she started her own business.
Wow. That's amazing.
Now, if we didn't tap through it, or she didn't come to me, or she was one of those people, who, like you said, who would say, oh, vision, why, it's too much work finding a why, she would have still been unsatisfied lawyer and would have caught up with her energy, her creativity, and her performance and personal life, feeling burnout. So you can see the difference.
Yeah, so essentially, it is a pathway to burnout.
Yeah, that's right. Even with all those skills and money and status. Now, the interesting thing about introverts and extroverts is extroverts thrive on status and power and money, because it fits their dopamine need, you know. Dopamine gives you buzz. Uh, Extroverts, we are not interested in status and money that much.
Introverts.
No, yeah, we are not interested in status and money, you know. So that's why it's so important that you get in touch with your passion
Mhm.
and what you are really interested in, and then you will succeed. And you'll get the money and the status will be bonus.
Yeah,
When
it seems like to me like we should all be more balanced, right? I mean, it would be nice if we could kind of have the best of both worlds.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Such a good point. That's why I'm talking about this, because as an introvert, especially if you, and not male and female these days, it doesn't matter. It's like you must start making yourself wrong. Like, why aren't I like that person going for it? What's wrong with me? I should be like them going for it. Well, physiologically, even your physiology is not geared to that, for that to go for it, for money and for status, So find really what drives you and you will succeed.
Yeah, is that like because I was gonna ask you if someone could take one thing away from what you're saying here, would that be it? Or is there anything else that you would like to say to someone
Yeah, look,
who's an introvert?
that one, if you pick that one, maybe that's the one of the things that resonates. The other thing is the basic difference, fundamental difference, it's neurobiology, your physiology. There's nothing wrong with you, you know,
Yeah,
as
there's
an
nothing wrong
introvert.
with you. Such an important message. It says there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine the way you are, right? We should all embrace that to even, extroverts embrace it too.
Exactly.
Because I think it's interesting how we can just be the way we are naturally, but then our environment will shape us because someone will tell us, don't be that or you should,
Exactly.
or we even just somehow, maybe no one tells us, but we're just observing and we draw conclusions. Children draw conclusions and come up with a story in order to cope. And we'll
Yeah,
make up stories like, well, it must be because I'm like this. We just make the story up
exactly.
and it becomes true. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
I see
Because
that happens more often, I think, with people than the other one where someone actually told them something.
right. Interesting. Yeah, that's right. Because we do learn from observation of the environment. Yeah. As we see what works, what doesn't work, or what looks like it's working or doesn't work, what gives people attention, what gives me attention from my teacher, rewards from in the school system. We learn from our environment. And then from, what those significant figures around us, especially up to the age of 7, tell us, who I am or how I should be and things like that. Yeah. And look, and once again, I just want to stress this. It's not about, extroverts or introverts are better or have all the problems or extroverts have easy life. We all have issues. We are humans. We have issues to deal with. But when we talk specifically about introverts, this could be some of the issues. It doesn't mean that everyone is dealing with this, but this could be some of the issues that some introverts will deal with. And with some kids, they grow up in an environment where parents actually recognize who they really are, and they affirm that and they nurture that, and then they don't start thinking that they are shy or anxious or something's wrong. They're like a stable, well-grounded introverts and like they're stable, well-grounded extroverts.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and your experience and your perspective on this because I think it's absolutely fascinating and it's such an incredible topic to talk about and continue to talk about. And I feel like everyone that's watching this is probably getting something out of it. So thank you for being here.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I'll have to have you back and we can talk some more because we could probably talk about this for a long time.
For a long time. That's right.